Yeah, that is a shameful manifestation of a lethal and malignant Black self-hatred that continues to express itself in the derision that he holds Black people.
I haven't done a video on Michael Eric Dyson or his cohort in race hustling, Joy Reid, in a while. So with the affirmative action ruling by the Supreme Court, obviously I had to tune in and see what they were talking about. Let's see what they were espousing at MSNBC.
We continue to swallow this bitter fruit that the majority conservative justices have forced down our throats today. I want to read you one tweet that spoke to me from historian, writer, and friend of the show, Michael Harriot. He wrote, "The Supreme Court did not strike down affirmative action. Admission preferences for legacies, donors, employee families, and special recommendations are all still allowed. The court struck down affirmative action for everyone except white people."
What are we, like 26 seconds into this segment and they're already blaming white people? You know, Joy Reid, the one who recently acknowledged that she got into Harvard because of affirmative action.
Let me just be clear. I got into Harvard only because of affirmative action.
See what else they had to say.
To his point, prior to today, Harvard has described race as a potential tip or plus factor, along with whether one of the student's parents graduated from the undergraduate college, whether a student comes from a low-income family, and whether a student has special athletic talent. After today, the only tips that remain are legacy, low income, and special athletic talent. Joining me now are Andrew Brennan, a 2019 graduate of the University of North Carolina, who was a party to the affirmative action case involving that university, Angie Gabeau, president of the Harvard Black Students Association, and Michael Eric Dyson, professor of African American and Diaspora Studies at Vanderbilt University and co-author of Unequal, A Story of America, apropos on today.
Oh, God, it's going to get good. Now, one thing I will say, I am so done with these liberals, with the black bougie elite like Joy Reid, like Michael Eric Dyson, who see black people as perpetual victims, who see people with my skin tone as perpetual victims. That is something that I rage against here righteously on this channel, because we are not victims. We are empowered for greatness. Yet the left and their spokespeople like Michael Eric Dyson and Joy Reid will lead you to believe that all black people are handicapped, that being born black is a handicap. I rebuke that. That is a lie from the pit of hell. I rebuke that. Just because you are born black doesn't mean that you are born handicapped, and therefore you do not need a handout. Okay? You don't need a handout. This is 2023. You do not need a handout. I do not need a handout. What we need is to level the playing field in terms of opportunity. What these people want to do is to artificially raise people up to the same level to get the same outcome, and it does not work that way. And why are we so concerned with quote unquote Harvard and these Ivy League schools? There are plenty of other schools that people can go to who are black. And a lot of black people don't need to go to college anyway, just like a number of other people who don't need to go to college. College is not for everybody.
So I wonder what you make of the fact that this court seems to think that choosing students like you is an affront to the Constitution.
No, it's really crazy. Because at least in my experience, I really found that my race is my identity.
We have failed Generation Z and the millennials. When I say we, I say Generation X, people that came before me. I mean, I'm in the tail end of Generation X, millennials. I fall within that time frame, but we failed them. And want to know why we failed them? Because we have allowed them to be indoctrinated with this notion, especially black folks. I'm speaking particularly to black people here, that we've been bamboozled. And we've allowed them to be deluded by thinking that they are only what their skin color enables them to be. Rather, they're limited because they are black. They have to see everything through the lens of race. And that is intentional. And that has been the movement that has been co-opted by the Marxists, by the progressives, and by the left to push this into the minds of young black people. When I went to college, I went to Alabama. When I was on campus, I was the president of a student business league that was predominantly black. It was for black students. And we had to call it a student business league because we couldn't call it something that was more identifiable with being a majority or predominantly black organization. And so in that organization, it was for community. It was making sure the voices of the black students in the business school and on campus were heard. I mean, there are plenty of things I did on campus in terms of leading a sit-in to protest the segregation that happened in fraternities and sororities on campus. There were a number of things that were done, but I never saw race as my identity. I never did. I never saw race as my identity. And that's probably because I saw Christ as my identity. Now, I wasn't as strong in my belief in my relationship with Christ as I am now, but I never saw race as my identity. But one thing I did see, and that had been pumped into my mind, was that I was black, I had to work 2 times as harder in order to achieve what white people had. And so that's what I was taught. That mentality is what I carried forward, is that I was going to work hard. It was going to be my hard work, not victimization, that was going to allow me to achieve. That is what I carried forward with me. And we have lost that. We have lost that sense of agency. We have lost that sense of community in terms of speaking to the young people and tell them, look, no one can stop you. If you put your mind to it, if you have a trust and a deep faith and conviction in God and work hard and have ambition and goals in life, nothing can stop you. The only thing that can stop you is you. And we've allowed this lie, this falsehood to be perpetuated in the black community to the point that this young lady says that she sees her race as her identity. We've allowed that.
Michael Eric Dyson, you have taught at many PWIs, at many very prominent majority white universities. How do you think these universities, in your experience and the way that they try to recruit students, will react to this decision?
Here we go. This is the point I want to get to. The good professor, Dr. Michael Eric Dyson.
Well, Joe, I taught at Chapel Hill for 3 years. I think that, look, the left has to have a long game and strategy like the right does. They've been laying in wait for 50 years to try to figure out Roe versus Wade, and they worked on it. And we got to understand and underscore, before I directly answer your question, why voting matters.
Okay, that's been the refrain of these so-called black revolutionaries. Voting matters. What happened to family matters? What happened to men matter? What happened to community matters in terms of making sure that we are together in terms of our belief in God? What happened to faith matters? No, everything is centered around politics. You want to know why? Because there's a power dynamic in Marxism. You have the oppressors and the oppressed, and they want to use political power to flex and to change things around to reinvent this country in terms of a Marxist, communist, socialist ideal. That's what they're looking to do. They want to change this country and have it based upon the ideals of Karl Marx. That's what they want. They want to switch the ideals of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and those founding fathers to Karl Marx, to Lenin, to Stalin, to Mao. That's what they want. And so therefore, they use politics, they use policy to accomplish that end.
Because Donald Trump not in office means that 3 Supreme Court justices that he appointed would not have been appointed, and Hillary Clinton instead would have appointed them.
I'm thankful for that. I'm glad Hillary Clinton didn't appoint those judges.
So voting continues to matter. I think that schools have the wide latitude and the ability to count race as merit.
Listen to this explanation of race as merit from Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. And that people like him are the ones pushing this junk into the minds of our young people. That everything is about race. Everything is through race. Everything is through the lens of race. There's nothing, this is race idolatry. He is idolizing race. Just listen to him, trying to equate race as a merit.
Right? So when we have a notion of merit, merit is not an abstract good, right? If you're in a boxing ring, it's meritorious to strike out and hurt somebody. If you're in your home, it's called domestic violence, the same act. Or when they said you can consider race, race was considered in terms of harming black people, but not to heal them. Well, the same intrusion that a bullet makes in the body, a surgeon makes to remove it. So it can't be that race is the problem in terms of removing the hurt and bringing healing about as it was in terms of intending harm. This kind of gobbledygook and malfeasance and legerdemain by these Supreme Court justices is utterly ridiculous. White folk get the hookup, black folk get the hook.
Boy, these people, that's why I call them the race hustle supreme. Everything goes back to white folks and black folks. Everything. It's like we're living in 1963 with these people. Like we haven't progressed at all. And that's the frustrating thing when it comes to these folks. They keep harping on the same thing over and over and over again. And they have to use these type of examples to stay relevant, because otherwise their argument falls flat. That's why they're against people like Tim Scott, people like me, because I'm a contradiction to what they're pushing. I'm a contradiction to what they espouse. I grew up in a single parent household in Mississippi. I should have been a statistic, but because of the grace of God, I wasn't.
So what we have to do is to understand that we have to continue to strategize like we did before there was affirmative action, so we can have a long plan. Schools can still consider race among many other factors. You can't stop a school from saying diversity is incredibly important and name that diversity in ways that obscure the racial dimension for strategic purposes.
And that's exactly how these colleges are going to get around this ruling. They're going to cloud the admission process to skirt around the unconstitutionality of using race in their admissions. That's how they're going to do it.
Purposes.
Let me quickly ask you what you make of Clarence Thomas's concurrence.
Yeah, that is a shameful manifestation of a lethal and malignant Black self-hatred that continues to express itself in the derision that he holds Black people.
Malignant Black self-hatred. Wow. I mean, Michael Eric Dyson has come up with some doozies. The thing he said about Lieutenant Governor Winston Sears, calling her blackface, speaking white supremacy, and the thing that have been said about Larry Elder, the blackface of white supremacy. But this is something. Wow. Malignant Black hatred. Because he chooses to stand on an issue when it comes to everyone being equal, he has malignant Black hatred. So anything that goes against the left's orthodoxy is Black hatred. Noted.
This is an unfortunate and remarkable situation where a Black man who used affirmative action, because his mediocrity is not a secret. He barely speaks in the Supreme Court. His inarticulate vowels continue to manifest an intelligence that is quite markedly inferior, and yet he has the ability and the power to kill Black people metaphorically by lifting up the very ladder that he used to get up on affirmative action.
Man, everybody doesn't use affirmative action to achieve in life, Michael Eric Dyson. Only the white liberals who want Black people to go to their schools utilize affirmative action. Partner?
Yeah.
This is so foul and nefarious in so many ways.
What you just said was foul and nefarious, man. The way you just insulted Justice Clarence Thomas, yeah, you may disagree with the man and some of the things he says when he gave his concurrence, but to say that man is not intelligent, that he's ignorant, that because he came from South Carolina as a gullah, that he can't speak intelligently or articulately on the Supreme Court, that's why he stays quiet? Man, brother.
And Andrew, I'll ask you the same thing. What did you make of the fact that the second to Black Supreme Court justice gleefully saw the end of affirmative action, which he has been trying to do for a long time?
I think it's a real shame. And as Justice Sotomayor pointed out in her dissent, because of today's decision, the police can consider my race when assessing suspicion of a crime, but a college admissions officer can't consider my race when assessing the potential contributions that I could make to a college campus.
Well, I tell you, if these are our future leaders, Lord help us. We are in dire straits if these people are our future leaders. Really, this is the product of the watered down, dumbing down of America. These two young people right here. This is the fruit of that. This is the fruit of the constant attack on Black people. The bigotry, I'm not even calling it soft bigotry of low expectations. The bigotry of low expectations. We get these unfortunate souls up here speaking this nonsense. That's sad. That is very, very sad that these are our future leaders.
Yeah.
I think it's that sort of tortured logic that makes no sense. And it's not just Black people that are harmed by this, Joy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having diverse college campuses benefit Black and white students of all races benefit. So that's what we're losing.
Indeed. And I'm going to give you the last word here. What advice would you give the next you who's applying to Harvard in this environment?
I would say hold out hope. I was outside the Supreme Court today, and there's a lot of people who are rallying, and also take action.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will, say that they feel uncomfortable or they feel disappointed by this decision.
Yeah.
But that also has to come with action. That also has to come with, community building, community organizing.